Hi everybody, Jim Ostrowski with the world famous inimitable Liberty Moving podcast. The only walking podcast in the world, or if there are others, the only good one. I was just singing the YMCA song. I'm not sure why, but I was just playing it on YouTube before the walk. So, Libertarian fork in the road. Actually, I was thinking of titling this cold, gloomy day in Buffalo, by the way, so you might be spared a long podcast. I might get too cold to keep talking. I was thinking of calling this the Libertarian moment, but people would be puzzled and pissed off by that. So instead, I'm calling it, as you know, Libertarians is supposed to be dead, right? And then Trump comes to the Libertarian Convention and says, I'm a Libertarian. So, my old paraphrase, the libertarianism always buries its undertakers. You can't get rid of us, folks, because we're right about everything. We invented the modern world. Our political operation is horrible, but our ideas are absolutely bulletproof. Oh, it's no pun intended, bulletproof. So, Libertarian fork in the road. So I have to credit the late, great baseball player, phenomenal. Like, he was known to be great, but he was actually better than people think he was. It's like the guy was phenomenal. Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And so I owe him the idea behind this podcast, which is that libertarians are facing a fork in the road, and I am going to advise them to take it. So, what's the fork in the road? I've been working on both of these concepts. I knew Trump was going to win. I called Trump the winner, I don't know, 2 years ago, but in all seriousness, in the context of the campaign. It was the Dana Bash interview, August 30th. I'm trying to find my clips podcast at that time, but I said, hey, we got another leaf blower. I love it. I said basically, Kamala's toast. I ultimately said Trump would get 51%. He's at 51% right now. I was thinking of forming a club, the 51% club, for people who predicted that Trump would get 51% no later than October 10th. It might be the loneliest club in the world. So I also knew that the Libertarian candidate would not do well. I didn't make an actual prediction. I kind of penciled in 1% just for the memo that I wrote, the open letter to the Libertarian Party, which was released on election night. I'm still getting that out by email to the various chapters and state parties. But, I don't have any staff, so it'll get done. I always do what I say I'm going to do. Sometimes it's a little slow. So I knew that that's one fork in the road, that the Libertarian Party has to admit that its strategy of electoral politics has failed. And, a party, a party can walk and chew gum at the same time. There's no law that says that the Libertarian Party can't promote direct action. In fact, it's my belief, and I'm not going to explain that here. Maybe I will, who knows. And one of the great things about the podcast is I never know what the hell I'm going to say. Geez, I said hell instead of that other word. Patrick is rubbing off on me. So, if you want to win an election, you have to do direct action first, because obviously there's not enough libertarians in the country. There's not enough libertarians in the country. So if you don't do direct action, in other words, by way of example, pulling your kids out of government school, your kids, even your own libertarian kids, are going to be brainwashed by Democratic members of Democratic unions who are teachers in government schools. So whether you want to do electoral politics or not, you still have to do direct action. It's a win-win. You can't win this argument with me. Okay, we have to do that. Fine. Do direct action. Because one of the direct action projects is a 1-hour program, which could be an independent program, or it could be latched onto any sort of organizational meeting, because it's only 1 hour. You and I both have been to a lot of organizations, and these meetings take 2-3 hours. They sort of drone on. You can always fit a 1-hour program. So what's the program? I've already written the text. It's in my book, Direct Citizen Action, as an appendix. Economics in 5 lessons. It explains economics in 30 minutes. The 5 big points of economics that a citizen voter, a citizen activist should know. And then there's a half an hour for questions. So all you need is somebody who's reasonably trained. I don't have to be the guy doing the lecture. I can certainly, pull my weight. But you get some young grad students in Austrian economics, a reasonably well-informed, libertarian activist, middle-aged, whatever, older, younger, doesn't matter. They can give this and then answer questions. If they can't answer every question, they can certainly point. There's resources there's written materials that you can point to. So you don't have to be like Murray Rothbard to give this talk by any means. Then what's that going to do? Well, if people understood free market Austrian economics, that would lead them to vote vote against 95% of what the government does, if not 100%. So, folks, it's not only like you've gotten your asses kicked for 50 years, and you have to do something new, or you're going to completely fall off the radar screen. You're already off the radar screen. You have to change strategy, you Libertarian Party people. So that's one fork in the road. And by the way, the whole liberty movement can do this and should do this, because the whole liberty movement is losing. So that's the one fork in the road. So where are you going to get that information from? It's my open letter to the Libertarian Party. I released it on Twitter and Facebook. It's not really on the other sites, but I counted up about. I'm usually my important stuff gets on about 12 different social media, so you're going to be able to find it. TikTok, the usual suspects, the big ones, the small ones, the ones that are, the resistance ones like Getter and Truth Social, Parler, and I might be missing a few. So that's out there. It's a very short memo, and that memo will go. It's already gotten to the chairman of the New York Party did a podcast with me the other day on election night about it. So it's already gotten to New York. So I'm going to make a formal request of all 50 state parties and the National Party to formally adopt a resolution saying we're shifting to direct action with a substantial portion of our resources. You don't have to give up elections. I think probably you will focus on fewer elections. The office of sheriff is extremely important, so maybe you should focus on that, or focus on key races. It's like when you're behind in resources, what do you do? Nathan Bedford Forrest had a aphorism that I think is still taught at West Point. Get there first with the most men. The Greeks mastered this concept. It's not a new idea in the West. You have a smaller force, you get there, and as part, I can't even think of his name. The Civil War general. Geez, I read his book. It's terrible. When you get old, you can't even remember names anymore. I'll think of it. Stonewall Jackson. He had 6,000 troops in the Shenandoah Valley against 60,000 Union troops. Guess who won? He got his 6,000 in a better spot. He divided and conquered. So the Libertarian Party has to reduce the number of its races anyway, just from sheer logic, instead of trying to do everything all at the same time. So that's that's the one fork in the road. That memo is on TikTok. It's on Twitter and Facebook, but it'll be all over the place soon. I'm going to do a lot more podcasts about it. I'll probably do a podcast where I read it, just so people can have access to it in video. Tried it the other day. It was just a little too windy. I normally don't have any notes here, which is, by the way, an advertisement for my health regimen, which will be the subject of my next book, Voting with Your Health, which is a form of direct action. So that's one fork in the road. And then the other fork in the road is there was an opening to Trump. Now, I didn't execute it myself. It was executed by Angela McArdle. We're not close. I know her. I've met her, I think, once. I hope she is familiar with my work. But I have been pushing this idea for years, and I certainly support it. Let's not. There's some notion out there that my open letter to the Libertarian Party is somehow contradictory to the opening to Trump, and somehow denying that that's a real important accomplishment of the movement. It's totally false. I did a podcast recently, and I said, look, the liberty movement has failed, but let's look at the highlights. There's three, in my view, and I'll reiterate this because it's important. There's three highlights in the entire history of the liberty movement. One, the Ron Paul Revolution. Two, the Free State Project. Three, the opening to Trump. So any notion that, I came up with the open letter to the Libertarian Party idea before the election. I didn't even know. Well, I knew who was going to win, but it was a separate thing from the opening to Trump. But again, to quote Yogi Berra, that's a fork in the road. We have to take both forks. So yes, the shift to direct action by the Libertarian Party and other aspects of the liberty movement, that's a big deal. That's going to take resources. That's going to take money. You have to take money away from stuff that doesn't work and put it into stuff that does work. You're going to have to take it, the Walk for Liberty concept, which could become globally viral, because a lot of the American diseases are going viral as other countries get inundated with, junk food and processed food. The Grand Jury Project, the app for the 3,000, we need to rank 3,000 counties. I already did it for the top 100. I have the formula. I just need some assistance on it. So we're going to have to take resources away from losing campaigns, run fewer campaigns, more strategically targeted, where you can actually, ironically, target more resources. Even though you're shifting resources, you're running fewer campaigns, you can actually spend maybe a little bit more money on key local campaigns, like sheriff, for example. The only law enforcement officer elected. It's the only one we can really trust, because they're elected. So the other fork in the road is the opening to Trump. I'm writing a book about it. I decided to write a book about it a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but I did a podcast about it. So on that score, and that's my contribution. Other people are free to do what they want. But that, other than me busting my ass for a month, hammering out this book, this is not a high cost activity. This is basically, the leading policy type people in the libertarian movement getting their ideas to the Trump administration. Now, I prefer the open letter approach. I'm not wired in, I'm not wired into, I know the people, they know me, but, I'm just going to drop a book. I'll drop a book on everybody and ask people to read it, and hopefully that book will be read by the Trump people. If they want good ideas, they'll read my book. If they don't, they won't. But again, trying to, in the next 6 months, heavily, because things tend to happen early, and then presidents tend to lose a little bit of their influence as the term goes on. There's really no reason why libertarians shouldn't besiege and overwhelm the Trump people with our policy wonk ideas. I'm going to do it my way. in a book that's maybe 50 pages long and that has the ideas that I think. Here's the thing about Trump. Good news, bad news. I talked about his ideology the other day on my podcast to Catholics. And Trump did win the Catholic vote. It wasn't because of my podcast, but maybe I turned, I don't know, 6 or 7 votes. Who knows? Again, I'm only responsible. I'm only responsible for what I do. But Trump's ideology is populist nationalism. On anything else, he's a pragmatist. That's good and bad, because pragmatism is really tends to lead one to sort of tinker around and experiment with government, usually in the direction of making government bigger. Somehow pragmatism never leads to, hey, let's try an experiment and getting rid of that fucking agency, you know. So populist nationalism is not inconsistent with libertarianism. I know the Beltway libertarians who say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I do fucking know what I'm talking about. I wrote your best paper, Cato. Yeah, I think I know something about policy. Both populism, particularly populism, but also nationalism, are susceptible to a libertarian interpretation. That's one point. That's good for us. Trump being a pragmatist, not so great. But the good part of Trump being a pragmatist is that he should be open to ideas unless he's fully committed himself to a policy position. So I'm not going to be saying, hey, Donald, get rid of socialism security, even though that's my belief. I think Social Security is an evil program. I think it's an extremely destructive program, and I have nothing good to say about it. But I know Trump's not going to get rid of it. So I'm not going to waste time. That's not going to be one of the chapters. I'll have something at the end saying, look, there are long-term problems with these programs, and you've got to start figuring out how to phase them out. But I know he's not going to do that in his term, period. So that's actually good. So there's room to, so I guess what I'm saying is, you put up a Venn diagram, libertarian ideas, and then match it up to what Trump's already said he's going to do, meaning you deduct that from the libertarian ideas. You still have a hell of a lot of libertarian ideas that he has not stated any opposition to. And his pragmatic, his opening to libertarianism, his pragmatism should lead, and the people behind him who I think lean libertarian, like Elon Musk, although Elon's got to be educated by Austrian economists about making government more efficient. That ain't happening, Elon, call me, okay? I'm on, you can find me. So there's a lot of opportunities there for that fork in the road. Let me shift gears. I'm going to talk a little bit about the context of all this, because there's this sense of, Trump won, and, we got the House, we got the Senate. I guess we have I'm not a Republican, frankly. I was, but I changed my registration to Libertarian. So there's this sense of optimism, but I'm here to put a little cold water on that. Because I have studied the history of the United States. I have studied the history of the Republican Party. So let me say, I got about 5 minutes left. Let me try to put this in context so people understand that with both forks of the Yogi Berra Road, it's urgent. There's no time to fuck around. We have to strike fast and hard and quick with both forks in the road. Direct action and the opening to Trump. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We better walk fast and chew fast. So why? Okay. U.S. history, 1776 through 1913, largely a libertarian model, with many, many exceptions, and the Civil War and all that stuff. Largely libertarian model. You look at government spending. Jefferson cut government spending in his first term. It remained low through the Civil War. It spiked, obviously, during the Civil War, but after the Civil War, it went down. It was bigger after than before, but it went down significantly and really stayed low until the progressives fucked everything up in 1913, and then with their stupid participation in World War I. And you see this huge spike in government spending around that time. So 1913, the Republicans were the big government party, and they stayed the big government. Well, so they were a big government party at that time. The Democrats shifted from small government to big government with Woodrow Wilson. Well, actually, William Jennings Bryan, but he didn't win. Wilson, Bryan laid the groundwork, and he was, I think, Wilson's Secretary of State. Wilson comes in 12, takes office in 13, and that's the beginning of the progressive era. We're stuck in the progressive era. So progressivism believes in big government across the board. We're still in the progressive era. And the mindset of progressivism, which I explain in my book, Progressivism, a Primer, which if you haven't read, you don't have a clue about what the hell's happening in the United States. Sorry, you don't. 12,000 people do, and you don't. So we're still in that mindset. The government has a natural tendency to grow, and very little interferes with that. And those mechanisms of growth are discussed in, okay, why is it that every time I hit the baseball field, I got to adjust my selfie stick? Those mechanisms of growth, I'm not going to go into them here, but government creates its own demand, certainly. The government controls education and so on. So we're in a mode of constant government growth with very little to stop it. And that's what this mega movement is facing. If they want to turn the country around, they're going to have to do it fast and hard. And because here's the thing. Yeah, the Republicans have the House and the Senate, but the Republican Party, the non-Trump Republican Party, is not in favor of cutting anything, because they haven't cut a single progressive program since 1913. So let's talk about, so Trump's apparently going to have a trifecta. We've seen this story before, and this is the benefit of being old. I lived through all this shit. I remember it vividly. So Reagan didn't have a trifecta, but Reagan had the Senate, and he had at that time there were conservative or moderate Democrats. Those people don't exist anymore. So he had some support in the House. He had public opinion behind him. He won, overwhelmingly against Carter, and then he won. He just squashed Mondale. So he had a lot of political momentum behind him. Bottom line, Reagan did not make government smaller. Reagan failed in that regard. A lot of libertarian rhetoric. He actually hired some libertarians. Sound familiar? Yeah, none of that failed. They whatever libertarians ended up working. Sorry, I'm walking over the baseball diamond. I'm not drunk. Whatever libertarians worked for Reagan, they sank without a trace and never heard from again. So that's failure number one. Now, failure number two. George W. Bush 2. He had a trifecta, I believe, for 2 years. He controlled everything. What did the Republican Party do? Not a darn thing. Nothing. Not a thing. They shrank nothing. He was a horrible president. Now, let's go to the third trifecta, if you count Reagan. Technically not a trifecta, but a de facto trifecta. Trump's first term. He had control of everything. The Republicans had control of everything. What happened? Spending got bigger. They spent more money. That's what Republicans do, because the Republican Party is a corrupt political machine. So don't be that confident about what's going to happen, unless there's a lot of urgency here, unless people are realistic about it and push as hard as they can, because it's pretty clear that they're only going to have 2 years, because the Senate map is bad for Republicans. And again, somebody wants to buy me a $500 selfie stick, I'll take it. The Senate's going to be probably Democratic in 2 years. The House will probably be Democratic in 2 years. They have 2 years, and we have no time to spare. The country is, Trump was right about this, the country is rapidly declining. And we're hanging by a thread. And Trump only won by 30,000 in Wisconsin. I mean, it was a damn, even though you're running against a horrible candidate, it was still a relatively close election in some of the key states. It could have flipped. So that Trump fork in the road, that's very precarious and has to be handled the right way. And if Trump doesn't strike hard and fast with ideas for radical, sudden, quick change, he's going to lose that opportunity. The Democrats will, things will, again, the natural tendency of government is to grow. And in 4 years from now, they'll have a Democratic president and they'll open the floodgates. They'll swamp red America with people from the third world that they think will vote Democratic. That's what they did for 4 years. And they basically almost got away with it. So that's the situation. I feel this podcast was a lot more coherent than I thought it was going to be when I started. So I just, again, two forks in the road. We need to take both of them. The Libertarian Party has to radically and immediately shift into direct action. If they don't, they're fucking toast. That's right. If you don't do it, you're toast. You can do whatever you want. Everybody likes to, loves their own ideas. And a lot of people don't like to take ideas from other people. That's a problem. It's a problem with human nature. If the Libertarian Party doesn't shift into direct action in a significant way, the Libertarian Party's toast. The Trump fork in the road, very precarious, has to be handled properly. I'm putting a book out with ideas that can be put into effect in those 2-year period, including, it shifts back to the other fork in the road, direct action. If we don't start pulling our kids out of government schools, it's game, set, match, people. I've been saying that for 25 years. The name of this podcast should be Nobody Ever Listens to Me. So that's a report. I'm working on both forks in the road. Take them. I'm going to take both.